This is how to pass a phone interview with a recruiter. So congratulations, you just applied for a job online and you got an email from the recruiter saying that they want to speak with you and interview you. Or maybe you watched my video on how to optimize your LinkedIn and this recruiter found you online and is now calling you to see if you want to come and work for their company. So this is basically your first interview with the company. Even if the recruiter tells you it's just a casual conversation, remember, it is an interview. The recruiter is the gatekeeper for the job. So if you do not impress this recruiter on this phone interview, you are not going to be moving forward. So in this video, we are going to break down what you can expect to happen in this phone interview with your recruiter and what are the common interview questions that they are going to be asking you so that you can be prepared and you can pass this interview. So if you want more career tips just like this and you want to pass more interviews so you get more job offers, make sure you click subscribe down below or share this video with a friend who would find this helpful. So first, let's talk about what is a recruiter screen, or why does the recruiter even need to interview you before you can move on in the process? So this first phone interview is going to cover a few things. First, they're going to make sure that you meet the minimum qualifications for the job. They're also going to want to make sure that your resume or your LinkedIn, however they found you, is actually your true experience. Because sometimes people can get a little creative on their resume or over embellish some skills that they may not actually have. So their job is to make sure that everything that you put or advertised is actually true about yourself. Then they're going to also want to make sure that you're excited about the job in the company. So they're going to do a little bit of selling and they're going to explain the role and the product or the company and the team. And then they're going to want to gather some recruiting information. And I'm going to explain what that means at the end of the video. And you need to remember that most recruiters are just recruiters. So they've never worked in the role itself. They've only ever been a recruiter, which means recruiters don't have the technical background to truly understand what you are doing. So recruiters are really just going to be listening for certain keywords and minimum qualifications that the hiring manager told them are important. So you need to make sure that you're keeping this in mind whenever you're talking about your experience to a recruiter. Don't get too technical because they probably won't understand what you're talking about, but also make sure you're using the right keywords or buzzwords to get their attention so that you do come across as qualified. So normally when you first jump on the call with the recruiter, they're going to explain to you exactly what the job is and what the roles and responsibilities are for the role. If the recruiter doesn't start by talking about this and asks you immediately to talk about yourself, you should pause the interview right there and first ask them to give you some context, because you want to be able to understand what they're truly actually looking for. The job description doesn't always tell you exactly what they want or exactly what specific skills are really important for this job and what skills are just kind of optional. You're going to want to be listening and taking notes here, because whatever they tell you they want in a candidate, you're going to want to customize your answer whenever you talk about your background so you can come across as the exact perfect candidate for them. Also, don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions to the recruiter. You're going to want to make sure you truly understand the role and the scope and the job title. Remember, not all job titles are created equally. You're going to want to make sure that the job and the scope of the role that they're trying to sell you on or have you interview you for is actually something that you are qualified for and is something that is appropriate for what you have done. You don't want to take a step backwards in your career. So after they're done explaining the role to you, that's when the actual interview is going to start. And you're typically going to expect somewhere between 2 and 4 interview questions total. You're typically going to have 2 behavioral interviews, and then you're going to have 1 technical question to make sure that you're actually good at your job. So here are some common interview questions that you should study up and prepare to answer. The first question, of course, is any version of tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume, or why should we hire you? This is a very common interview question on your recruiter interview because they're going to want to make sure that you can talk about your background and that you meet the qualifications for what they are looking for. If you want a full deep dive on how to best answer this question, I made an updated video on how to answer tell me about yourself on my channel right over here, so you can watch that if you want. But generally, your answer should be between 1 and 2 minutes long. Not any longer than that. Do not ramble. That is the biggest mistake that people always make on these recruiter interviews. Now, make sure you're using the context that they gave you earlier in the call about the context of the role so that you can clearly tell them that you have this experience so that you can stand out. Now, the second question that you can definitely expect if you applied for the job is, why do you want to work here? Or if you didn't apply for the job and they found you on LinkedIn, they're probably going to ask you, why are you potentially looking to leave your current company? And this is very important because if you applied for the job, your answer needs to be very, very different than if you were passively found through LinkedIn or something like that. If you applied for the job, your answer needs to have a lot of research involved. You need to understand the company's business model, the company's products, its competitors, any recent news about the company's mission statement, and their values. You need to do all of this research to better inform your answer so that you can explain why you want to work there, that you are actually excited to work there because you've done all of this research, and then you need to, very important here, and then you need to tell them why you are the best person that can help their company achieve these goals. Now, if you didn't apply for the job and they found you, you can be a little bit more honest here. And that's what the recruiter is looking for. They're trying to understand, what is it going to take to motivate you to consider leaving your job and coming to work for them. So you can be a little honest here, but don't be a total diva. Be honest and express what it would take for you to leave, whether that's role scope or responsibilities or a certain product you want to work on or a certain skill set that you want to gain. But very important here, you need to show excitement about the idea of joining their company. The key takeaway here is, no matter whether you applied for the job or they found you, you need to show them that you are excited to work there. No recruiter is going to be moving you forward in the interview process if they don't think you actually want the job. Now, after these first two behavioral type questions, you're going to get some form of technical question so that they can test your technical knowledge and make sure that you can actually do the job. So this could be a HR related question, this could be an accounting question, a coding question, a design question. Just be prepared to answer something about your current job and how you would do things. This is usually going to be a behavioral interview, so you're going to want to make sure you're using the STAR method when you're answering this. When you're talking to a recruiter, you're almost always going to have a behavioral interview question here when it comes to technical expertise, because they want to make sure that you have actually done this in the past. Not very often will they be willing to take a chance and hire someone who has not done something that they need before. All right, now last, to wrap up the phone call, the recruiters will usually want to ask you some recruiting questions. They're going to ask you things about your timeline and timing and if you're interviewing with other places. This is not a trick question. You don't need to lie here. In fact, you should be honest if you are interviewing with other places, because then it'll force them to speed up their interview process because they wouldn't want to lose you to one of their competitors. Then typically they're going to ask if you have work authorization, and then they're also going to want to confirm that you are okay either working fully remote, working hybrid, or if you need to relocate to come and work at one of their other offices. This is typically when this will come up in your interview. And then lastly, recruiters these days will now most likely be asking you for your compensation expectations. And you can be very honest and start to have this conversation early in the process, because you don't want to spend hours interviewing and finding out they can't pay you what you want. So if they ask you what your compensation expectations are, you should turn it back on the recruiter and ask them to share the range for the role. And you should also have the recruiter break down and explain to you their total compensation package. Like, what does the bonus structure look like? How does it get paid out? What does the equity package look like? What's the vesting schedule if you do get equity? Are there typically sign-on bonuses? Is the relocation going to be covered? You're going to want to ask all these questions up front to get your information. Then I recommend you actually don't share a number with them. If the range that they share with you seems good, then just say the range can work for me, but I would like to negotiate further along in the process. And there's nothing wrong with that. The recruiter may push a little bit to make sure that they actually have the appropriate budget for you. So you don't have to give a number, just say that the range you shared would work for me, but I would still like to negotiate farther along in the process. Now, this is very important here. If the range that they share with you for compensation is not what you want, you're going to want to ask the recruiter about the level for the role and if you could be considered for a higher or different level. Because if they're $100,000 off from what you want, they're probably targeting the wrong level of the job within their company. Because like I said at the beginning of this video, not all job titles are created the same and equal between companies, especially if you work at a really large company and this is a smaller company like a startup. Your job title will not transfer one-to-one, and recruiters may not know that when they look at your resume or your LinkedIn profile. All right, so now you have all the tips you need to ace your recruiter phone interview. And if you want other videos, let me know in the comments what subjects would be really helpful for you so I can create those videos because I want to be as helpful for you as possible. Thank you all for watching. Don't be afraid to shake things up.